Welcome everyone to this webinar on your first assessment, Assessment 1 called Professional Duties. So by now you should have done your readings of the matching chapters in the learner guide, had a look through the additional readings, maybe watched some of the additional videos as well, maybe taken some notes, reread the learner guide again. So make sure you've got all that knowledge down pat, ready to do your assessment. So for this webinar, I'm going to go through each question one by one, give you some little hints and tips for the best ways you can go about answering these. So well done for tuning into this webinar. It'll give you, I guess, the best chance of doing as well as you can on your first assessment. So as you can see behind me, I've got this assessment. I've downloaded the PDF or the Word version. So I recommend you do that as well. So when you go into the assessment tab on the portal, you've got the online assessment, and you've also got the PDF and the Word version. So download probably the Word one, so you can type into it. So you've got the same, you've got like a backup of your work. So never just sort of enter it into the online assessment and leave it as is, because you want to have a backup of your work. If something goes wrong, your computer runs out of power when you're halfway through a question and you lose your work or whatever, make sure you've got that backup. So I've got the Word version behind me at the moment. So you can either type your answers straight into the Word version and then copy it over into the portal, into the online assessment, or vice versa. Type it into the portal and then copy your answer over here and keep that backup for yourself. So Professional Duties Assessment 1, when you have a look at the assessment, you'll see there's all of these instructions in bright red here. Please read these instructions carefully. So it gives you an idea of what is in this assessment. So you've got 5 quizzes and a series of short answer responses. Tells you that you need to submit via the online assessment only. If you need any support, please have a look at the course guide or contact your trainer. Have a look about writing good answers and these final tips. So read all of those before you do your assessment. Let's see what those assessment questions are. Number 1, 2, and 3, it says complete the following quizzes. So you'll need to do these quizzes here. So if you click on if it has a hyperlink, just click on it. Otherwise, you go to the quizzes tab at the top of your portal, look for those quizzes there. Each quiz is a multiple choice. There'll be 10 questions. They're fairly straightforward and shouldn't be too difficult if you've done the reading. So that learner guide, as I said, read it again. It's sort of like your Bible for the course. It's going to give you most of the answers for what you need to know. You will need to do a little bit of extra research as well on some of those ones that require a bit more detail. But if you've read the learner guide thoroughly, have your learner guide open in front of you or up on your computer while you're doing your quiz as well, just so you can refer to it if you need to. A couple of hints with the quizzes: make sure you read each question carefully. Don't rush through, and read through all 4 options carefully to make sure you've chosen the right one. Sometimes, if the wording's quite similar, if you're not reading it carefully, you might just choose the incorrect option. So just don't rush through it, read it carefully, make sure you've done the learner guide readings. So let's go straight down to number 4. And the question is asking, how can manual handling injuries be prevented? Give 3 ways and an accompanying explanation. So you need to fill the entire table. Wherever you see a question that has a table, every single part of it needs to be filled in. So if you want to do 1 or 2, it's not going to be fully complete. Make sure each of those sections has something in it. So you're going to list your ways to prevent. So just, very, very briefly there, just sort of, listing what that way is. And then in your explanation, you're just going to explain what that way is. So does it need to be, big long essays on it or anything, but, as long as you've explained and letting us know how you can, prevent that injury, explain it, might be some dot points, might be some sentences. As long as you've explained it in enough detail, you should be okay with that one. Question 5. So this is the one about the safety sign. So what is the meaning of the following safety signs in terms of supervising children? You can see that the one for the emergency assembly point already has an example answer for you. So this is a really good like template or a model for you to do your own answers off. So you can see you know, how this example's been done. If you sort of follow that format for your own answers, then you'll be on the right track. So you need to, what is the question again? So the meaning of the safety sign, so say what it means, and be specific in it, in your answer. So if it's some sort of warning sign or some sort of, you know, description, or it's an instruction, actually say what it's informing you of. So what is it specifically? What is it warning you of? What is it telling you to, you know, be careful of? Or what is it telling you not to do? So be really specific in explanation. So, you know, imagine maybe you're explaining it to a young primary school student. So, you know, spell it out for them, what it is, what it's telling you, what it's informing you of. And the second part of that question, it says in terms of supervising children. So just sort of gives you a little bit of a context. So say if you were, you know, at a school or on an excursion, came across these signs, you had some children with you, what would you need to do to, you know, follow that sign when you're supervising students? So what would you, you know, say to the students, or what would you need to ensure that they're doing or not doing? So yeah, if it's got to relate it to the TA role, then you'll have a good answer there. And try and make it, you know, as long as or as big as sort of that example there, and you'll know that you've, you know, probably covered enough detail that we require. Question 6. What is the title of the primary WHS, workplace health and safety legislation in your jurisdiction? Jurisdiction just means your state. Who is in charge of enforcing this legislation, i.e. the name of the government agency? Hint, for two-part questions, it's often easier to answer each part separately. So you might want to just you know, answer these two questions separately. So give the title of the health and safety legislation from your state, and then the name of the government agency. So as long as you've got those two names or two titles in your answer, you'll be correct. To make sure, if you're going to be copying, you know, the name, not copying, I guess, stating what the name of the legislation is, try and do it like as it's written. So if it's, you know, if it's got a title, or sorry, if it's got a date or the name of the state or something in the title, sort of do it word for word from, so you've got the full complete title. Okay, so that's a pretty easy one. Don't need much more apart from those two names or the title. Question 7, though, this is one that's going to require a little bit extra work. So it says, in terms of working in a school as a support worker, so support worker is what you're training for here, to be the teacher aide or education assistant or SLSO or whatever it's called in your state, or integration aide. So in terms of working in that role, what does duty of care mean? So sort of be coming at it from that point of view. Is, you know, imagine that you're working in a school as a teacher aide. What does it mean to have that duty of care? So you're just sort of explaining what it is, what it means for you, and you know, for this one, you could put even a couple of examples of what that might mean. You don't necessarily have to, but wherever you can sort of put in some examples, it just gives your answer just that little bit more depth, because you're thinking about how that, in a practical sense, of how that might apply to the role. So if you can pop some examples in, that would be good. And don't forget about the hint here as well. It says, this question results in many resubmissions. That means a lot of students don't quite get this one right and have to redo it. So spend a sufficient amount of time researching, drafting, and editing your response. So yeah, you might need to write some notes, go and, you know, write down a list of, you know, things to do with duty of care. Yeah, maybe draft a few times, putting some of those you know, ideas together in some sentences, and you know, do an edit. Minimum of 3 to 4 sentences required here, so make sure it's yeah, at least that 3 to 4. Could even go longer for this one, because there's quite a bit, you know, there's quite a bit you could say. And then make sure your answer relates to working with children, and is in your own words as much as possible. So yeah, keep those things in mind there, and make sure you've done the readings in the learner guide for that one as well. The assessment webinar will help too. I mean, sorry, not the assessment webinar, just the topic one webinar. Number 8, in your role as a support worker, again, teacher aide, teacher assistant, LSSO, integration aide. So in that role, how could you reduce the spread of infectious agents that cause illness, like the flu, colds, diseases, infections, and food poisoning? List and briefly explain 3 ways. So we need to have at least 3. A little sort of hint here is that if you do have to list sort of a certain amount of things, to do 1 or 2 extra just in case maybe 1 or 2 of your answers is not sort of 100% right or not right on the right track, then at least you've got a couple of others as a sort of buffer. So yeah, you might want to do maybe 4. If you're confident with your 3, then fine. If you maybe one of them you're not 100% sure, just maybe put that extra one just as a contingency plan, I guess. So you're going to have a list. So with lists, a little hint is numbers. Numbers are always good when you're doing a list. So you might have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. List the way that you're going to prevent the spread of the infectious agents, and then briefly explain. So don't just have, 1-word answer. You want to have a bit of an explanation as well. Any question where it's asking you to explain something, you want to pretend that you're explaining it to someone who has no idea, who's never heard of this. So you're really sort of spelling it out for us, as if we have no idea. So then we can sort of see what you know and see what your knowledge is on it. So, we don't want to take anything for granted. Show us what you know. So yeah, pretend we don't know anything and you need to explain to us. So when the markers read it, we can, we can really see, that you understand these things. So that's question 8. Moving on to question 9. Pretty simple one here, which is what 8 everyday items would you likely find in a first aid kit? Briefly state what each might be used for. So you're going to have your 8 items listed in any first aid kit, and it says everyday items. So we're not talking about, a technical first aid kit you find in a in a hospital or something, just, everyday first aid kit that you might see in a classroom, even, in someone's car or bag, everyday items for dealing with minor injuries or illnesses. So briefly state what they are and what they might be used for. And yeah, think about school setting, that sort of context, then you might help you think of when some of these things might be used. So question 10, read the Disability Standards for Education 2005, provide the web address that you use to access this document, then explain the meaning of the term reasonable adjustment. So with these questions that you've got, a couple of sentences, make sure you're answering each part of the question. So first thing, you're going to need to read this Standards for Education. So you're going to need to find that first. The next question, you need to provide the web address. So, once you've Googled the name of that document, you get the web address, put that in your answer, have a bit of a read through that document, then explain the meaning of the term reasonable adjustments. So when you're having a read through that document, try and find that term reasonable adjustments, and see what it says about that. You, again, always think, okay, from the teacher's aide point of view, what might this mean for, the role of teacher's aide in a school, and of what reasonable adjustments mean. So give the meaning of it. And if you wanted to take this question, even a bit more depth into it, you could even give some examples. So whenever you can give examples, it takes your answer just to that next higher level, because you're relating it to real life situation. You're sort of thinking about what this means for your future role in the classroom. So, but as long as you've got the web address, the explanation of what it means, you'll have an appropriate answer. Take to the next level, giving some examples. All right, question 11. Read the relevant award or agreement for support workers in your state or territory. Write its full title below, then list 3 vital details that new support workers should know. So you're going to read the, we've got to find it first, your relevant award or agreement. So, that would either be, for teachers' aides or education assistants in your state, whatever teacher aides are called in your state. You're going to be looking for the award or agreement for those workers. List the full title. If it's asking for the full title, include all parts of the title. And then list the 3 vital details that new support workers should know. So we've got the keyword here, details. So a detail is not just one word answer. A detail is, it's in a little bit of detail. So make sure your answer, you've got a little bit of detail. And because you're just taking, this from the relevant award or agreement, there's no need here really to put it in your own words or anything like that, because you're literally just saying, listing what some of that detail is. So that's totally fine. If you copy and paste 3 interesting sections that you think a new TA should know about, find something relevant, not just some sort of some technical or, some information that's not that relevant. So try and find, things that are interesting to you for your answers there. And you need 3 of those. Another thing that I'm going to say there, it's good in your first assessment to start getting used to referencing or putting a link to any references that you've used. So this would be a good one that you can sort of start doing that for. So you might set out your answer with the full title, with your 3 points, and then at the bottom have the word reference, and then with a link to that website or that web page where you got the information from. So, you've got a good little structure, and you're also showing where you're getting your information from. That'll put you in good stead for your future assessments as well. You want to get into the habit of putting links to the references of things that you've accessed. Okay, moving on to number 12, explain the concept of confidentiality as it relates to working in a school. So we've got the main word here, so it's about confidentiality, and it's related to working in a school. So don't use an example of, if you're working in retail and you need to be confidential, etc. We're not talking about different industries. Think about working in a school, what confidentiality, what that concept is. And think about, could some examples here give your answer just a little boost? Could you give, some examples of what kinds of things are kept confidential? How you might keep things confidential? Maybe why it's important to keep things confidential. You might like to think of the 5 W's when you are trying to explain something and wanting to go into a bit more depth. Who, what, where, when, why. So what it is, how you do it, where, when, etc. And it just can help flesh out your answers a little bit if you're not sure how to expand on it. Question 13. What is an ethical dilemma? What are 3 questions you could ask yourself if you were faced with an ethical dilemma? So 2-part question here. Make sure you've answered both. What is an ethical dilemma? So we're after sort of a definition here, saying what it is. And then we're after 3 questions you could ask yourself if you're faced with one. So your structure will be your definition and your 3 questions. Number 14, what is a conflict of interest? And what should you do if you find yourself in this situation? Again, 2 parts to the question. What it is, so you want to have some sort of a definition, what a conflict of interest is, and then what you should do if you find yourself in this situation. So, what should you do? Like, who should you tell? What are you going to do? You think about those things. And again, an example. Would an example be, a good way to show us that you understand this concept? You might want to put an example there. Number 15, explain the concept of informed consent in terms of working with children. My biggest hint for this question is please read your learner guide. Please have a look carefully in your learner guide for information on what informed consent is. It is in there, it's in the learner guide. Have a look at that first before you go and do any other research online. But for this particular question, you're going to just explain what the concept is in terms of working with children. You could possibly give an example. Think, would an example help me show what I know? If it would, pop an example in there if you think it would help. Question 16, what is trauma-informed care? So a very big topic here. We basically just need to see that you understand what that term means, what trauma-informed care means. So just a definition would be fine. Some people like to, it's an interesting topic, so if it's something you are interested in, there are additional readings on the portal that you can have a look at. And you might want to go into a bit more detail, perhaps with some examples here. If you are going to be referencing, remember underneath your answer, just put the word reference and where you got the information from. But really, we're just after a definition of trauma-informed care here. So, it might be a few sentences. You might want to go above and beyond by adding a little bit extra there. See how you go with that one. Number 17, you're giving an example of how you would use active listening when a student is upset. So just needs to be an example here. So it's not asking you to define anything or, explain anything. It's really just the example. Within your example, it should be showing us that you're using active listening. So you'll need to find out about active listening. So in your example, you're actually, illustrating how you're showing the active listening. So you might need to find out, well, what are the elements of active listening? And how can your example show us that you are using, using active listening when a student is upset? A way that you could set out something like this is like a script of like something the student says to you and then what you say back and sort of the conversation. Or perhaps, you're painting a picture of a scenario or a situation. So, imagining a scene of you helping an upset student, what you're saying, what are you doing, how are you showing them your active listening and so forth. So really paint a nice picture for us so we can see how you would use that active listening. Question 18. The following behaviours may indicate possible psychological or mental health problems. And you've got a list of these different behaviours here. You can see changes in motivation, changes in mood, physical changes, changes in interaction, changes in perception or self-image. List 3 mental health issues that any of the above behaviours may indicate. The hint here is that there are some additional readings that you can access that can assist with this. So it just says list 3 mental health issues. So in your answer, you just need to list 3. You could expand upon your answer by giving a little bit more detail, but as long as you've got 3 relevant ones that relate to these behaviour changes, then you'll be on the right track. If you have referenced anything, for example, these resources, just make sure you've put that in your references underneath, the name of the document, perhaps where you got it from. You might say from additional readings in the portal, or if you've gone to a web page, pop that reference down there as well. Question 19, what should you do if you observe any of the behaviours from question 18? So for this one, don't overthink it. With anything of this nature, who would you speak to and not speak with? What type of information should you pass on and when? This is a really good hint here to help your answer. If you just sort of follow those little questions there, then you'll be on the right track. Yeah, and read your learner guide, of course. There'll be lots of info in there. Question 20 is a quiz called Child Protection for Support Workers. So just find the name of that quiz and complete that one. Number 21 is a written question. What is the title of the primary child protection legislation in your state and what is its purpose? So make sure you've got the matching one for your state, put its title, and then just say what its purpose is. So have a bit of a read through and just what its sort of its main purpose is, sort of the the big picture, the overarching sort of goals of that primary legislation, or what is it there for, what is it about, why is it needed. Pop that down in your answer as well. You can go from that sort of structure of starting with sort of a broad definition and then narrowing it down to get more specific. So, you could have your broad sort of definition or your broad purpose, and, can narrow it down into being more specific, like what does it mean for a teacher aide? What does it, relate to that role of the TA? Okay, question 22. Explain how the signs of abuse and neglect may change depending on factors such as age, culture, disability, etc. You've got a link you can look at as well with a little hint there. So we're going to be explaining how the signs of abuse and neglect may change, and it's depending on factors such as age, culture, disability, or etc. So you can, you have options here if you're going to focus on just one of these factors or all three. So it doesn't say you have to do all three, so you can do one or you can do all if you're pushing yourself to give that a little bit more of a broader range of in your answer. You can do all three. One is fine. So you're going to explain how the signs may change depending on factors. So whenever I see a question which is asking you about how things change, it's really sort of asking for a comparison. So it's saying, if you're going to focus on age, how, with the signs of abuse, what signs might you see in a younger child compared to an older child? So a student in grade 1 compared to a student in year 10. The signs might be different. What are some of those signs that might be different with age? Can literally say what some of the physical or behavioural signs might be for the 5-year-old compared to the 15-year-old. Are they the same? Are they going to have the same signs, or are they going to be different? So sort of go into a bit of detail with some specifics there. You could do the same for culture and disability if you want. And again, if you have done any additional reading, such as following that link there, underneath your answer, put the link to that reference as well. Question 23, read the relevant code of conduct or ethics. So it could be called a code of conduct or maybe a code of ethics, and list 3 broad responsibilities of support workers. We've got a hint here. We recommend using this WA code or the one from Victoria, even if you live elsewhere. Some states don't actually have one, or it might be called something slightly different, like the code of ethics. So if you can't find a particular one from your state, feel free to use one of these ones here, because you're going to find that the ethical requirements are going to be the same throughout Australia. They might be worded slightly differently, but they're going to be the same types of things. So it doesn't really matter if you live in Tasmania and you've used the Victoria one. We don't mind that. They're going to be the same. It's pretty similar content anyway. So read it and list 3 broad responsibilities. Make sure you've got at least 3 there. 24, think of 2 hazards that are commonly found in the classroom. Using the hierarchy of control, what action could you take for these hazards? So you want to make sure you filled up all the squares, all the boxes. Say what the hazard is. So just think of an example of something that could be hazardous in a classroom. Write down what it is there, so we know what you're talking about. And then your action using the hierarchy of control. So you're going to need to find that hierarchy of control, look at the words, look at the levels, look at the terminology, and use some of that terminology in your answer here. So yeah, refer to that hierarchy of control. We want to see that you're looking at it, that you're using it. So use that terminology. And make sure you've got at least 2 examples. Question 25 is a quiz. And then that's it. You will, once you've finished, make sure you have, read through this advice for finalising your assessment at the end. Don't forget to congratulate yourself or reward yourself for a job well done. And there's a checklist as well, just to make sure you have, done all of the requirements, checked your work, the original source has been indicated, completed each question to the best, and so on. Just go through the list there, ensure that you have completed all parts of your assessment. If you have any questions, or if you just need anything clarified, please contact your trainer, and your trainer would be happy to rephrase or answer your queries that you might have about this assessment. But well done for making it to the end of the webinar and your assessment. Submit that assessment when you're ready. Don't be scared to press that submit button. Remember, it's okay to get resubs. They're totally normal, especially for your first assessment. Most students will get resubs. If they're just really there to help you to improve, better your understanding, so you can be the best teacher aide that you can be. So don't take it personally. Resubs are normal. It's actually giving you that extra opportunity to learn a little bit more, to help you improve. All right, well, bye-bye for now.